Every barber is an artist. You design every haircut.
So, Brian, it's a pleasure to have you. So we're going to start off with just the typical questions, just as if we don't know who you are and we want to know you and uncover Brian and get to know what kind of person he is and what he's done.
Okay.
So from the get-go, when did you start composing?
When did I start composing? So the honest answer is probably when I was really little. I would always go over to my relative's house and they would have a beat up piano in the corner, a little upright or console piano. And before taking any lessons, I would just go to the piano and gravitate and just start making sounds, pounding out the low notes and pounding out the high notes to make various things that were coming through my head. And in a weird way, I guess I was composing back then. So I was always drawn to the piano and drawn to not just composing, but kind of creating stories. So taking whatever ideas I had in my mind and translating that to the piano. Now my relatives got tired of me banging on their pianos, so they told my parents, get this kid some lessons. So they did, thankfully. And that was probably around 10, actually. And then I started taking formal lessons. And from that point, the two things started to marry together, my creativity and my desire to tell a story. And then I started to acquire the tools that I could do so in a little more coherent fashion, I suppose.
Amazing. Do you remember the moment where you said to yourself, I want to do this as a career? And
that's a good question. I think the first time I really wrote a piece of music and felt that urge was seventh or eighth grade, which for us is about 12 years old, 11, 12 years old. I think I was reading Alice in Wonderland at the time or watched the Disney film or whatever it was, but I wrote a piece of music to go along with that story in my mind. And I presented it in, I think it was my English class. It was part of our project and got some good feedback and thought, wow, this was fun for me. And then people responded well to it. So I thought, well, maybe I could do that again. And then I started to do it again and again in my mind, like, well, maybe there's something behind this. And there's possibly a career down the path of that initial seed.
Amazing. The next question is there a single piece of music that is inspired? I guess you spoke about the whole composing thing happening quite naturally through the family and stuff. But like, is there anything that has inspired you in any projects that you've done that you've listened to? Maybe it's happened to a lot of artists. It's happened to me even sitting in a cafe where a bit of music has come on, and I'm in filmmaking, so I write stuff, and there was a bit of music which triggered something. It made me feel a rush of emotion, and then went home and I was like, I need to write. Have you had any examples of that?
I have. So growing up studying the classical masterworks from Bach to Beethoven to Brahms, and you name it. One piece toward the end of my formal piano training was the Mendelssohn Rondo and Capriccio, which is a nice piano work. But for me, there were so many different aspects of it that I'm going back to the storytelling thing that like I don't know if you can hear it on your speakers here, but the beginning is this nice lyrical melody. Something like that, right? So this big, broad, lyrical thing, but then halfway through, not even halfway through, but a quarter of the way through, you get this fanciful little thing. Kind of this flighty little thing. And to me, when I was playing that and I learned it and did recitals, it was telling a story, and it's always stuck with me. I've always kind of gone back to that piece sort of as a source of inspiration, that within one unit there could be so many different emotions and such a broad story you can tell, which when I do a film score, I'm thinking of that, what brushes do I pick up and what kind of colors do I use in my music to help tell the director's story in that particular case.
Amazing. And in your kind of, aside from composing in the professional world, what kind of music do you listen to in general, which influences your professional career?
So for me to steal from Duke Ellington, there's the quote that there's two kinds of music. There's good music, and then there's the other kind, right? And I really believe that sincerely, that there's not one form or genre that's good, better, worse than anything else. I think if it's a great rock song, it's a great rock song. If it's a great country tune by Johnny Cash, that's fantastic too. My parents, when I grew up, listened to the Beatles and Johnny Cash and the Everly Brothers, so I've got that kind of stuff inside of me. But then at the same time, I was listening to Bach and Beethoven and Mozart and musical theater scores from The Music Man to Phantom of the Opera, and then then film music, of course, too. When I started to get into that, so yeah, I think anything I can grab onto, and like you said, you could be sitting in a cafe or in a restaurant or walking in a grocery store and hear something, and like, what is that? I haven't heard that before, and really get excited about it.
Yeah, amazing. What are the special challenges, pleasures of working with particular musicians, singers, ensembles, orchestras? Can you name a few of the people that you worked with and really loved the outcome of the process and the project?
So as a film composer, especially nowadays when budgets tend to be limited, the expectation is the composer to do most of everything on his own or her own, which resorts to creating things in the computer, right? Using samples and those types of things, which are great and they're fun and they're wonderful, but you can get really sucked into that. So for me, I try to remember that, well, it's so much better when you have real players and real musicians. And I've conducted full symphony orchestras to string quartets to solo musicians, but there's something different about, a violinist can play the note C, and then the violinist next to him can play that same C, but it sounds a little different because it's a different personality, right? And then you start to build, and you're not building just sound, but you're building personalities and years of experience and emotions that you can never get from a plugin. So I think every single musician, regardless of level of expertise or caliber that I've worked with, has an effect on me, and that changes how I write too, because you think, all right, how would this sound if this person played it, or how would it sound if this ensemble played it? Whereas if you're in the computer, it's just kind of dry and cold and never the best resort.
Yeah, I guess it takes away the natural element, which is where I believe the fire is. Like, it can, when working, I guess when working from behind the computer or working, I guess we felt it during the corona, not being around people. Not be, the energy is different when it's person to person, and for sure. As a musician, when did you what is your definition of success?
Definition of success for me, it's never been the financial aspect of things, as nice as that can be. It's more about, number one, writing something and feeling good about what you've written. Hopefully, number two, that you've done something different than you've done before, that you are constantly pushing yourself to do new things, different things, try things. And then in turn, the most rewarding thing is to have it actually played and then have people respond to it. I think of music as, it's not, notes on a page, which are, this is just a representation of what music looks like, right? It's not actual music. It's, you write it, the orchestra plays it, conductor conducts it, and then the audience gives that response back. And it's this really cool circle. So for me, the reward is getting that response, good or bad, and responding to that in my own way.
Amazing. What do you feel needs to be done to grow music audiences and listeners?
I think there's so much music out there now, which is fine, but there's the streaming services, there's movie, there's film, there's music that plays pretty much everywhere you go, in your car or in the store. And so people are hearing music all the time, but I don't think they're always really listening to music. I don't think they take that time to, it's just kind of there, right? So they're not saying, oh, that's a great piece. It's just sort of the background, which is okay. But I think the way to grow listeners is, if you can get them in a concert hall, that's fantastic, but not everyone can buy a ticket to Carnegie Hall or the closest theater. I think it's finding those moments where you can just listen, whether you're just sitting in your car and you turn on the radio and you just take 5 minutes and forget everything else and just listen to something and take that moment.
I guess now, especially in this our society now, where social media is so prevalent and everyone is kind of on their phones constantly, we forget to take time and kind of appreciate art, appreciate music, and take time away and just listen to it and understand all the components that people take for granted, that even the elevator music is not just one person. The amount of work that goes into music to create that, and we just see as elevator music, but it's someone has gone into a studio or a place and given their time to it, And I guess taking time, like you said, just listen to it and asking questions to yourself,
Yeah, being an active listener, which I think the best thing we can do is teach our children that, right? Teach the younger generation and instill in them that sense of curiosity that you can take a moment. Not everything has to be a TikTok that's 5 seconds long.
Exactly.
10 seconds, maybe.
Exactly. Other than music, what other things bring you inspiration? And this is a question I'm going to add to it. It's, as artists, I believe that you can get inspiration from anything. It could be looking at the way someone walks, or what they eat, or the way they speak. It could be anything. Other than what, like as an actor, you might be inspired from, for example, a book even, or a sculpture. What is there something that inspired you that then you've taken from into the music? You know, has there ever been like an experience even, or something that isn't quite anything to do with music, but you adapted it and used it into your composing?
So for me, prior to having children, it was just music all the time, and that was my source of inspiration. But honestly, having my 2 children and my family, that's a source of inspiration to me. That's completely aside from music. But what was the Sondheim quote in Sunday in the Park with George? He said, "The 2 things we leave behind in the world are children and art," right?
Yeah.
And it's through their eyes and watching them succeed or have struggles of their own. That inspires me almost more than anything, and kind of fills that well within you. And then you feel like you really have something honest to contribute. And whether it's direct or subconscious, those experiences kind of enter into the music making too, in more of an emotional way. So I would say that that's the most inspiring for me. And then beyond that, I don't have time for much else.
Yeah, I can imagine. Which person from history, dead or alive, would you want to sit down, have lunch with, and just discuss about life?
So I've thought about this. The quintessential answers would be your Bach and your Beethoven and your Mozart, and that would be fantastic. And then as a film composer, I immediately went to John Williams, and I thought, well, that would be fantastic as well, because he's such an inspiration, and I've grown up with all of his scores from Star Wars to Indiana Jones. But then about a week ago, I saw Dune in the theater, the new motion picture, which I was blown away. I didn't have a cinematic experience like that for years. And hearing Hans Zimmer's score there, where he took, the space type movie where you expect a certain type of sound that we've heard for decades, and completely turned it on its head and made this amazing experience. And it's very different from the type of music I write. So if I had the opportunity to sit down with him and have lunch, I would have so many questions and ask, what was your process? How did you create something so different, new and fresh and exciting? And what can I learn from that?
Yeah, I think Hans Zimmer would definitely be one of the people I'd like to sit with, for sure.
Yes.
Great. Great to kind of have a better insight on yourself. Let's go on to your project. So that you sent over, The Long Hair, which won the best soundtrack at the Munich Film Awards. So you can see your trophy just there on the piano.
Very wonderful. Thank you.
Amazing. So how did that come about? So how did the project come about? Were you approached, or was it something that that was you kind of yourself brought to the table? How did that all start, and how did it begin?
So the short story of it is that this is a director I've worked with for several years now on many projects. Met him through a friend of a friend in Los Angeles, and we've done several films together. And you'll find that that's the most important relationship between composer and director when working on a project. So I trust him, he trusts me, and we tend to work together. So he enjoys lots of documentaries, but these little short vignettes, which are really awesome, kind of an insight into someone's life, a capsule. In this case, it was a barber who was in his upper years, one of the last barbers that were around, and telling about his life and his story. So this was just something that he decided to do, and he had access to this person and to be able to shoot footage. And he went to me as his composer because we've worked together and had a great relationship. But it's just fun I love documentaries because they're honest. So finding music that fits that honesty is a challenge, but also a great reward too, if you get it right.
Amazing. And further on, we had several we had questions from several people, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video. For someone who is playing the piano or the violin or playing an instrument, in their early teenagers, and they're looking to probably go off to college or maybe music school, what advice would you give to them?
I would say that the initial thing, like any type of skill, is never give up. If it's something that you have a passion for, there are moments where you will want to give up, that you reach a plateau, that you work very hard. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I spent playing a scale over and over and over, and it just drives you nuts. And you're like,
Mhm.
why did I ever do this? Why do I take piano lessons? I can just go outside and throw the ball around or something.
Yeah.
But there's something in the back of your head that says, no, keep going. But a lot of people, when they hear that, plateau or reach that plateau, they stop. They quit. They stop playing. They stop composing, whatever it is. So my biggest advice is, if it really is a passion of yours, don't give up, because the adage of everything worth having is hard work, right? Then just keep pushing through. And on top of that, don't have huge expectations. I mean, you're probably not going to work with Steven Spielberg as a budding composer, but try to find the next one. Try to find someone who's just starting off just like you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. Start small and have experiences so you can build and build and build.
Amazing, amazing. And how is your so we, as you know, you have your film came first place out of 171 soundtracks, which
Wonderful.
is
Wow.
amazing. It's always good to hear. And another question we had is, we discussed your process. How's your festival run going?
Pretty good. So the long hair, that particular documentary has done very well in terms of the film itself, which we actually just won a Telly Award for. So we're excited about that. And in terms of the music, several awards have come along with that also. So I think that it comes down to the root of the character, that there's such a spirit behind him. And it's not just the music, but it's the story. Like, it's about a barbershop, right? So the initial thing was to write kind of a fun barbershop-y tune, right? Which was sort of like this. Kind of going back to the 40s or 50s or what have you. But this gentleman was at the end of his career, so there was this sense of nostalgia that went along with it. So the second theme, which is probably the predominant theme, kind of this longing, looking back, and the trick is to put them together and marrying those two ideas of
kind of bittersweet, like a bittersweet, as if like an end of an era kind of had a beautiful life, and then now it's coming to a bittersweet end. Amazing. Yeah. Also, just to mention that you winning an Emmy Award for The Builder. Yes. Would you like to mention anything about that?
I would. So that, very much like The Long Hair, a short film, 7-8 minutes tops, but that was about another older gentleman who was in the end of his life in a care facility and losing a bit of his memory. But the one thing he could do was build things out of little popsicle sticks, those silly little pieces of wood. Yeah. But he would build his childhood home or his schoolhouse when he grew up as a kid. And by that construction, he reconstructed his memory to some extent, so he could recall and connect with his family, with his past. So that's another case where the music won an Emmy, the film won an Emmy, but it's more about the guy in the story, right? I mean, he's the real treasure, the real winner, and we were just putting a light upon it.
Amazing. It's been such a pleasure to meet yourself.
Thank you. Likewise.
Another thing I do want to discuss just before, we always at our festivals, it's not just about now, we always care about what happens after. And I guess that as the Munich Film Awards, we always try to be in the journey of the artist once they go off and their festival runs have ended. And we've had many filmmakers and composers that have come to us year on and year out. What's the next steps for you? Where are you going now?
So with the same director, David Kuznicki, the production company is Media 523. We have several documentaries that are in the works. A few I can't talk about because we're not quite there yet to release them. One of them was about kind of an agricultural war that happened at the turn of the century in New Jersey, which he's got some great ideas for. So we have several projects brewing, and a lot of that is just how it works. That one will take off or one will sit on the back burner.
Yeah, of course.
When he has something, he'll show it to me and I'll start messing around with some ideas. So yeah, we have several things coming up, hopefully soon.
Amazing. Any plans to come to Europe?
I would love to. I've been to Europe several times. love the culture. I'd love to bring the family to Europe to have my kids experience more than just the little bubble over here. So once travel is a little easier, we would love to get over there, maybe even next summer.
Oh, amazing. Brian, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
To meet you. And we will be having events and Q&As throughout the year with different composers, and we'd love to definitely get you involved. We'll be corresponding, and it's been a pleasure. It's been such a pleasure, and hopefully we'll be able to have your future projects at our festival as again, which would be amazing.
Awesome.
And thank you very much. Thank you
Nice
so
to meet
much,
you.
and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye now.